Welcome back, everybody, to the Rule Your Pool podcast. I apologize for being AWOL for 2 weeks. Travel has overlapped with trying to get these things out every single week. Been visiting a bunch of customers. It's kind of nice being back in the field, visiting customers, teaching classes. That's always nice. But it has prevented me from being able to do this. I've also been working on a topic that we're going to talk about in the next episode with the same guy that we have on this episode. It's good to have you back, co-host Jared.
Oh, man, I've had a long hiatus. Some things have just been going on in the world, and I'm happy to be back. I know it's been a minute. I don't even remember the last time I did an episode, but I'm happy to be here to keep you in check.
Well, I don't know if you're going to be able to do that, but yes, it is good to have you back because we have had nothing but technical difficulties using this software that we're trying to do to have multiple people on the podcast at once virtually. We used to use Zoom, but that was a lot of editing time after the fact, trying to merge the files and make it overlap correctly. And if this works, it's great, but it has failed me on 4 consecutive guests that I haven't been able to release those episodes, and I'm very frustrated with it. And it's hard to get those people back. I've had some cool guests, and this software that supposedly is fixed now, we're going to hope that this works. In this episode, it's going to be a short one, but it's an important one. And the reason I say that is because I was just training customers this past couple of weeks, and most people did not realize this was a thing. And for the homeowners out there, this is very important. But for pool pros, it's critically important to understand the difference between volume and weight. We're talking about measuring chemicals. Jared, anything to add before we go?
I obviously did not read the show notes, but I'm glad you told me what we're going to talk about. There's also another piece that we could probably touch on is paying attention to the active chlorine or percentage strength on your bottles and barrels, because that does play a big part in how much money you're spending to do a certain thing.
Well, we covered that in a previous episode, and it was actually a pretty deep one. And that would have been, that would have been in episode 131, way back in the day. I think that was recorded in December of 2023. We recorded that. So if you actually listen to the podcast, Jared, you would know that we've already covered that, but we can cover it again today. That's fine.
Thank you.
All right, let's go. Welcome to Rule Your Pool, the podcast by Orenda that explains and simplifies pool chemistry so that anybody, regardless of experience, can understand it. I'm your host, Eric Knight, bringing clarity to these subjects so that you can bring clarity to your water. If you're ready to rule your pool, then let's go. We talk a lot in the 6 bad habits that there are things that people don't really realize are a big deal, but they add up over time, especially for a pool professional. And these bad habits cost a lot of money, and they cost a lot of risk as well, because a lot of problems are caused by ignoring these things, and they cost pretty much nothing to fix. One exception to that is a very low cost of using measuring cups. In most of the classes that I teach, I talk about the 3 most profitable tools that pool pros should use, but they rarely do. And those 3 tools are a clean white bucket, a thermometer, and measuring cups. Real quick recap. A white bucket, not an orange Home Depot bucket or a blue Lowe's bucket, is important, and they're free because they're just old chemical buckets. They are going to be used to pre-dissolve dry chemicals, to dilute acid, and the reason it needs to be white is to see color contrast in water if you're doing something like the white bucket test. The thermometer should go without saying. We need to know the temperature to know the LSI. That's a pretty simple one. But measuring cups are often not used, and I don't understand why. Sometimes people will use a scoop and they'll just throw in a scoop, but they don't really realize how much that is, to Jared's earlier point of not paying attention to the percentages of what you're throwing into that pool. But a lot of people that I see have a measuring cup, but it's a liquid measuring cup, and they're scooping dry chemical with it. And that is a bad practice because that is not how you measure dry chemicals. So what we're really going to cover here is the difference between volume and weight. Jared, why are all liquids measured by volume? Do you know?
By volume?
Yes.
Because that wouldn't make sense. The densities are different depending on which liquids you're using,
Correct.
But that still is a weight thing. No, I don't know.
The real reason is when something is liquid, it will fill the exact volume of whatever container you put in it. That is not necessarily the case of dry stuff. So if you have flakes, for instance, there's going to be a higher volume. It's going to look like a bigger pile because there's a lot of air pockets in it. It cannot completely fill it.
Prime example is DE, very light.
Light and fluffy, exactly. So you're going to have a higher volume for weight. So if you were going to standardize how you measure something with dry chemicals, you can always weigh an amount of dry chemicals, right? You just put it in whatever size, you zero out the scale, you put it in until the weight is correct. That's a lot harder to do with liquid because, Jared, you know, PR 10,000 is a lot heavier than water. So there isn't really a standard weight to liquids. Gasoline is lighter than water. Chlorine is heavier, right? So how do we know based on weight? Well, we don't. So there really isn't a standard weight measurement for liquids. We just do volume. And therefore, all of the standards are based on volume because that is simple. A cup of milk is identical volume to a cup of water or a cup of chlorine or whatever. And we can do that because liquids will always fill the exact shape of a container. Dry chemicals cannot do that. All right. So there's going to be air pockets in there, and that's the variability. So that's the basic reason why. When you look at the Orenda calculator, there's a note at the bottom of your dosing that says dry chemicals are by weight, liquids are by volume. So you need two measuring cups. You need a liquid one and you need a dry one. Now in the pool industry, Jared, you've been a pool pro for a long time. The dry chemical scoops, what's different about that versus the liquid?
Well, the dry chemical scoops, they have a handle on them and they're rounded on the ends or they're flattened on the bottoms. And people generally just throw them in their buckets or their bags, depending on which chemical they're using. And the assumption is that a 1 pound scoop is a 1 pound scoop. A 2 pound scoop is a 2 pound scoop. That is specific to that chemical in which that scoop comes in. Okay.
For instance, granular Cal Hypo comes with a scoop that says it's 1 or 2 pounds, depending on the brand.
Or 8 ounces or whatever it may be. That's for that chemical. You cannot take that 1 pound scoop and use it in DE and then go to calcium and then go to whatever, because those are not all 1 pound.
And hold on, before going further, you're right, but you bring up a good point. You should never just transfer this stuff without rinsing the thing off and drying it first. You do not want to have residual Cal Hypo stuck to a wet cup and then go reach in and scoop granular trichlor. We had a customer post this on Facebook just within a month ago, and it blew up his cart because just a little bit of Cal Hypo was stuck to it, put it in dichlor, and kaboom. So it ties back to chemical safety, but always clean the thing in between. But continue, Jared.
Yeah. So in the pool industry, and I'm sure if you go to a retail store for your homeowner, you see the orange scoops or the blue scoops or the different colored scoops. It's always good, obviously, to measure out, like Eric was saying earlier, by weight, put it on a scale. It's not that complicated, zero out. And for DE, get a Sharpie and write a line. So this is for DE. This is where you fill it for DE. This is where you fill it for bicarb and so forth to get your various weights on that scoop. Or if you have a dedicated scoop, that's even better. Now, there are scoops that are sold where they'll have the marks listed on the outside of the scoop for the various chemicals that we commonly use in the industry. So definitely a good tool to have.
Yeah. 1 pound of DE is a much bigger volume than 1 pound of Cal Hypo. Cal Hypo looks like a much smaller amount, but it is 1 pound. And our calculator is based on weight. So 1 pound is 1 pound, even though it looks smaller than a pound of DE. And that's why these scoops have graduated lines. So like I said, this is a short episode. Just be aware. Use a liquid measuring cup for liquids. Rinse it out every time in between. And then use a dry one with those graduated lines on it, which you can get at any pool store or pool distribution. And if your store doesn't have it, you can get it online. It's very easy. You want one that has a line for sodium bicarb, for Cal Hypo, calcium chloride, etc., DE, if that's the case. And you should be able to use that and just make sure that the chemicals don't interact. These things are not expensive. It's not a bad idea to have more than one. Label it. So like if you have a dedicated Cal Hypo scoop, keep it just dedicated to that. Do not interact it with anything else. In fact, just today, there was a massive fire from Cal Hypo at a distributor, was there not? Who knows how that happened?
Yep. And this isn't the only, this is a common thing. The stuff is volatile, Cal Hypo specifically. It's not stable. So any moisture, anything like that causes it to catch fire. These are chemicals we deal with. They are very real.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't rinse a dry scoop and immediately put it back into a chemical. It has to be dry when you use it. So just be very careful. I would say common sense, but if you don't know what you don't know, common sense is not common. But anyway, that's pretty much all we have for this episode.
I do have to touch on something I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
About paying attention to the percentage of strengths that we mentioned in an earlier episode. But the only reason I bring it up now is because it's fresh on my mind. It's been a project that I've been working on. And
hold on, you work on projects?
I know. That's why I haven't been here.
I didn't think you actually had a job anymore.
It's consumed my whole, 2 months or however long it's been since I've been on here.
Whoa.
Maybe. I don't know how long it's been. But looking at the different strengths of chemicals and how they're not very clear when you buy them, it's very important. Like I was looking at just Cal Hypo because we're talking about it, for example. There's percentage strengths of Cal Hypo that range from 48% to 73%.
Mm-hmm.
That is a massive difference.
Yes.
And if you just walk into your retail store or your wholesale supplier, whoever you are, and say, I need Cal Hypo, well, they're going to give you what they have. But let's say you normally buy 73% Cal Hypo and they give you 68% Cal Hypo.
Mm-hmm.
That is over a 7% difference in strength. So therefore, you're paying 7% more. On the label, it looks like a 5% difference. But if you're looking at a dose rate to get where you want to go, it's actually over a 7% difference. If you divide the 68% by 73%, it's over a 7% difference.
Right. That's a good point because, again, you're comparing the chlorines. If you're used to what that higher strength does, you're absolutely right. It is going to be a 7% reduction in
You need
strength.
7% more. Mm-hmm. So if you walk in and just ask for something generically like that, beware, you could be paying more inadvertently. You might pay the same or a little less up front, but you're going to be using more to accomplish the same thing.
Which is going to increase the amount of calcium that you're putting in your pool and the amount of salt because you're putting chlorides in as well. Speaking of which,
amount of money it's going to cost you, it's a lot of things.
Speaking of which, this is a good use for our new Chemiculator, which is the second option in the Orenda app under the main calculator. We added it this summer. And you can go in there and you can type in a custom percent for Cal Hypo or liquid or trichlor or whatever you have. And you can type in that percent and then select 1 pound, for instance, or 2 pounds, whatever it is based on your pool. And it will show you in real time exactly the chemical impact that that's going to have on your water. That way you can see it for yourself. You will see that there's a big difference between the 65% and the 70%. And that calculator is going to show it. So if you want to go over to the custom because you're buying something from a retail store or Lowe's or whatever, and it's a lower number, just type it in right there on the percentage and you will see on your own screen exactly what that percentage of Cal Hypo is going to do. Good point.
Yep. Well, I'm glad we could rehash this after many, many moons and many episodes, but I felt like it was worthwhile since it was top of mind.
Yeah. I hope this was informative for you, and it should go without saying, but there are people that make this mistake, and I just witnessed it in the past 2 weeks where people just didn't know. And we want you to be informed on this podcast. We want you to rule your pool. And if you're a pro, we want you to rule all your pools, plural. So we hope this helps you.
And not waste money by having different measurements and different volumes and thinking we're doing something that we're not. So this is part of, standard operating procedures, being better at running your business and knowing what you're doing. And at the end of the day, hopefully that benefits you. That's the goal. Hope you're not listening just to hear Eric's voice or me occasionally to pop on here to tell him he's an idiot, because you're taking time out of your day. And we hope that we provide some sort of value.
Well, you're not wrong. I am an idiot, but that's not why they're here. At least I don't think so. They're here for the music and Jared. I get too many comments of people like, bring Jared back. I'm like,
sorry.
Jared doesn't even listen to the podcast. Why is he so much more popular than I am? I don't get it. You have a fan appeal, man. You got a big fan base of at least 7 people.
It's because they get tired of listening to you without somebody interjecting, at least keeping you in check or trying to.
Yeah, that's fair. Anyway, this has been episode 157, I believe. And yeah, 157. Look at that. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. And until next time, good luck.
Thank you for listening to Rule Your Pool, a podcast by Orenda Technologies. For more information on what we discussed in this week's episode, check the links in the description or visit www.orendatech.com.
I hope you find this show valuable enough that you tap that subscribe button and share it with your friends. You can also like us on Facebook and social media. And with our help, you'll be able to rule your pool without overtreating it with chemicals and wasting money. I'll see you next episode.